Well, hello everybody. It is already semi-finals week, and I can't believe we're so far through the series, Alistair. But this week we're joined by the fabulous Wendy Gardiner, who Alistair and I have known for many years, but some of you may not have seen Wendy. So, Wendy, would you like to introduce yourself and just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, please?
Yes, well, so I've been in the sewing industry all my working life as editor of magazines, and I'm an author, so I've written 23 books. I've done the TV shows, I've done, as Alistair and Kim have done as well, all these different TV things. I did actually make a dress for the BBC in 30 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah, so totally ridiculous, and pretty much you wear it once and that would be it. It was for a toddler, and it's what the BBC do. They actually sort of say, we want this, can somebody do it? Anyway, I did. All I did is anyway. So it was wearable, but I wouldn't like to have washed it and worn it again. So I've also most recently been doing the workshop organising for knit and stitch shows, Festival of Quilts, Stitch Festival, which I've really thoroughly enjoyed, but I've just given that up so that I can basically semi-retire and do more of what I love, which is teaching. And the other thing I'm doing is murder mysteries as an actor.
Oh, are you?
Which I just do for fun. And I love
Excellent.
it.
That's fabulous. Do you have to dress up?
Yeah, depending on the era and things, yes, you have to sort of dress the part. And there's a cast of 6, and we go to hotels that have organised these events. So everybody else is there as dinner guests. And we join them as guests, but we're part of the murderer. And then we have to, play the scenes out throughout the evening. It is really good fun.
And do you make your own costumes for that? Because
I have done sometimes, but a lot of the time they're modern day, so it's not, it's whatever I have. I mean, I've had to play like a little tarty woman, and awfully I could get the costume out of what I've got. That's a bit frightening, isn't it? I just pulled it a bit lower and wore it with ridiculously high shoes and lots of makeup. But I've got a dress for the 20s, the 50s, the Victorian period.
Excellent.
I've got those that I've made, yeah.
How interesting. Now, you do have a link with the Sewing Bee as well.
Yes, so one of the books I wrote was the Great British Sewing Bee from Stitch to Style, and that was for the 4th series, which was Esme's first series.
Right.
So that was quite interesting. So I went along. So I was asked if I'd write the book, and I was actually given, basically, from the moment they sort of sent the contract to sign to me to write it and to deliver it was 4 weeks. Now, if you've written a book, you'll know it's a 6-month process minimum. So this was a real labour of love. Unfortunately, one of my very good sewing friends, Claire Tyler, helped as well. So she helped do some of the projects, but yeah, never again. But yes, it was good fun to do it. And it was lovely going to see the filming. I went and saw the filming of the 2nd series, sorry, the 2nd episode of that series. And it was when they were making baby grows. I don't know, it always sticks in my mind, this one, because there was a lovely French contestant who made a right hash of the baby grow, and she managed to get the legs all wrong and everything. And she was in floods of tears when they came to do the judging and saying, please don't show this on TV. And of course they do, because it's entertaining.
Yes, of course it is.
And that's what you sort of have to remember. But I do remember sort of seeing Esme for the first time, and Patrick, and they are really, really nice, both of them.
And of course you've met them regularly over the years anyway, because Patrick was at Stitch, the Stitch, I always get the name.
So he came to Stitch Festival this year in March to do a Q&A with me, and I'd had to send the questions in advance for his approval, and then they came back with a few tweaks and a few changes, as happens. He's not the only one. So we sat down to do this Q&A. One of the first questions I asked him was about his degree, and he immediately said, why are you asking me about that? What's that? And I said, because you said I had to. I thought, I'm not taking the blame for this. I said, you said I had to. I didn't. I haven't even seen him. I said, well, your agent did. He said, oh, that's what agents do. And then he proceeded to tell us all about his degree and everything. So
right.
Oh, he was very, very entertaining, and he was supposed to be talking for half an hour, and it's about an hour and a quarter. Very, very passionate about the eco and sewing, for sustainability and the British industry. He really is very passionate about that.
So I wonder how that sits, because one of our criticisms on the transformation often is the fact that they'll use very usable items such as the cricket wear, the rugby tops, and at the end of the day they're trashed, whereas they could actually be recycled. So I wonder on a personal level where that actually sits with him.
Yes, he didn't mention that at all. And I agree with you, particularly this time, I think, because sometimes when you see them turning plastic something into something, I think we all hate that challenge, don't we?
Mm-hmm,
But you know,
mm-hmm.
funnily enough, the contestants love it.
Right.
And I always ask them that because I often do interviews
Mm-hmm.
with them at the shows. And I always say, well, the transformation challenge, because we all hate it. And they say, no, it's great because it means they haven't got to work to a pattern. They can
Mm-hmm.
unleash their creativity and they can just have a go. And sewing expertise isn't that important for that challenge.
Yeah.
I don't like it because, number one, you can't make anything decent in that kind of time frame. You really can't. And as you say, you're basically trashing what's a perfectly good thing to make something which is totally unwearable.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't like it. And I just think it's ridiculous waste of time. And it's not showing upcycling in a good light.
No,
Because
that's
if
right.
you watch that and you think, oh goodness, if I try to upcycle, I'm sorry, I know like this week's Cat's dress, Esme loved because it was very similar to one from her collection. I didn't like it at all. It was totally
No.
unwearable.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it
Exactly.
wasn't sewn really.
No, no, that's
Well,
right.
get into that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alistair.
I said I think I would get into that one.
Just
Well, I could have got one bit of me into that one.
If I-
One bit.
If I
Make
nip
the
and
army.
tuck and I sort of like squish a bit into my Spanx, then I might get into it. I don't know. We'll see.
Absolutely no chance.
We'll
No
give-
chance.
All right.
No, I mean for me, I've got no chance. I could get
No.
my arm in. That's about it. Good morning, Alistair. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. How are you, dears?
I'm fine.
Well, I'm a little bit tired because we've got horrific. The people at TfL have decided to close the entire tube network, which trying to get in and out of central London to make sure that our very famous Lion King show, the curtain goes up and it comes down. How these people are getting into central London to be, and we got a taxi last night to Liverpool Street because they started to close the one Elizabeth line down. Guess how much it cost us just to go on a less than a 10-minute journey?
I hate to think
£45.
that's London for you.
Yeah, so everything is bonkers at the moment, and I've got the same journey again. It's not so bad getting in. It's 10:30, 11:15 at night to start your journey coming home. That's when
Get a tent. Just get a tent.
Just stay in the theatre.
Oh yeah, that would be a good idea.
We were thinking about that. We've got quite a few at the moment. I'm working on a wildebeest costume. I've had to strip it back and remake it from scratch. So I've got to finish the rest of that when I go in today. But it's quite warm. It's quite
keep it cuddled in. Anyway, shall we talk about the semi-final? So the first pattern challenge this week, because it's 1920s week, was +4s. They had to have a fly and a zip. There was pockets below the knee with a strap worn for sports. Usually they needed to use sturdy fabric. And one thing that really came out, that it's the first time I've heard it, Patrick actually said, we've given them wool, although different weights. Because we've questioned in the past whether they've walked into a haberdashery of a mixture of different fabrics. So that sort of answered one of those questions. The thing that they had to have was that the waistband had to fit the mannequin as well. And of course, they had that cuff and the strap and the buckle. So I'm going to come straight to you, Wendy. What did you think of this particular challenge?
Well, I learned something immediately. I did not know +4s were because they were 4 inches below the knee.
No,
I didn't know that. Every day's a learning day. I think they all did incredibly well. I personally can't. I just don't see the point of making something like that because it's so old-fashioned, unless you're making it for a costume. But there was an awful lot of techniques involved in that, and to get a fly zip and the side pockets and the cuff and the buckle and the straps was incredible, I think. I personally would have thought they'd have to be lined, but there was no time for that. And they only get 5 hours, and that's to cut out the pattern as well. I mean, I presume they literally have a pattern sheet and they have to cut the pieces out, or are the pieces already cut out in the envelope?
I would presume the pattern pieces are already cut out in the envelope.
I would hope so for them, because that can take a couple of hours, cutting out all your pieces.
I think the other thing was, sorry to interrupt there, Wendy, was Yasmin's not a good one for ironing, but Kit always irons these pattern pieces. Have you noticed? In every one of these pattern challenges, and he's won up to last night. He'd won, or up to this week's episode, 6 out of 8. And Patrick's made a comment in the past about ironing your pattern pieces. I think they're cut out, but yeah. Sorry.
I know, and I think okay, hand up. I don't always iron my pattern pieces. I really don't. I spread them out with my. Do you as well? You don't iron them, or you do?
No, not overly. Just because I always, when they're pinned on, or however that I've attached them onto the thing, I always with my scissors. But that's just experience.
Yeah.
You.
And I think if you're working with paper, as they are, it's possibly more important, because the creases would be more sort of permanent. Whereas when you're working with tissue, you can flatten them out.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I don't necessarily.
Yeah.
But yeah, they did make a big thing of that. I don't think that necessarily makes a difference between a well-stitched and a not well-stitched garment, though. I really don't. It's not like quilting where a millimetre or 2 out can make a huge difference. It doesn't. It really doesn't. What makes a difference, if you're supposed to cut on grain and you don't, that sort of thing makes a difference. But whether there's a tiniest little crease in the pattern, I don't think so.
So, Alistair, what did you think? Because Patrick and Esme made a comment quite early on about Kit's weight of fabric. His was considerably thicker, and yet he continued to use it. If somebody came along to you and said and questioned that, would that put a red flag? Would that make you change your mind? Or would you think, I'm just going to carry on? Because the rest managed to have a slightly lighter weight, and Ola's particularly was quite a lightweight wool.
Right, so there's several things to consider when you're doing this. So I'm not new to +4s. As everyone knows, I started House of Alistair, and I was on Savile. I had my studio on Savile Row for quite a few years. I specialised in women's wear, not in menswear. So +4s were always, they're mainly used for golf. So if anyone, and shooting. So when they say sports, bearing in mind, when this was produced, most of our garments, especially that type of thing, before heavy drills and things like that came in, cotton base and flaxes, everything was made of wool. And you had things made of wool because clothes weren't as dispensable as they've become. So they're not seasonal. They weren't things. They were expensive commodities. Like even ladies, they would go to a fashion house and commission new gowns every sort of like season, but they would still have the other gowns in their wardrobe ready to wear for functions. That there were investment pieces. That's what I'm trying to say. So the different wool bases, there's several tricks in which you can do. For instance, if you're doing a facing with such a thick thing, even like a Harris tweed or something like that, you can put a lighter weight wool in the inside facing, so that a modern day take is we would actually line the inside of the trouser with cotton, so it's taken out that bulk. The one thing I will say is, obviously we did have a discussion before we came on air. Obviously there's been a lot of editing going on, and obviously the way that this episode has been edited, I'm giving everything the benefit of the doubt, but Kit hasn't necessarily done himself any favors in terms of what he has sort of like said in terms of like the trousers and things like that. There were several mistakes. Every single pattern is different. And if you've never made a particular pair of trousers before, you still need to read the instructions, or you still need to prototype them up. I wouldn't go into a store and get a Vogue pattern and just go, I know exactly, I've made dresses before. Yeah, you might have made dresses before, but you're not, this one might have a cowl drape, or it might have a very particular seam going on, or you might be doing a bias cut version, or it might be this, or it might be that, or it might be a completely Grecian-esque sort of thing. So I think his choice of wool, yes, the color was lovely. It was too thick. That was like a coat wool. It wasn't really made to make +4s. Plus also, when you're dealing with such a thicker fabric, you need to add extra allowance into the waistband, because when you've got something so thick, you've cut the outer, which we see, but when you put that same thickness in the inner, it's like putting foam inside something. When you put foam or an extra thick layer in something, it makes the inner circumference smaller. So that's why it would never fit the mannequin. But then it's the drape of the +4s as well. You've got to choose a medium weight wool. You don't something too thick, and you certainly don't choose something that's too fine. Because then you have to add stabilizers and in floating canvases and things like that in to give that wool structure. So there's lots of different types of wool. So it's not just as easy as, oh, I'm going to make it out of wool and I pick that one off the shelf. Also, that thickness on the little tabs, he could have used a little bit of, say, lilac cotton as affecting to reduce the bulk.
Could he though, Alistair? Was that available? Because that's what I would have said. I would have changed all the linings and facings to a lining or a cotton, but were they available? Because as you say, on the shelves it was just wool. So was that an option?
Well, they did pick up. So, for instance, they had a pocket in there, and there was they chose fabric to make the pocketing out of. Okay. So, in actual fact, they could have done that if they wanted to, and that's a quick way of being able to reduce bulk. Also, when they're talking about I call it stepping. So, what you do is you trim one side of the seam allowance, so it's quite short towards the seam, and what that does is it's the same with. So if you've ever put ice wool in a sleeve, or you've put some sleeve head in, what the sleeve head does is it stops the bulkiness of a shoulder pad being so harsh and sort of like pointed. It sort of allows it to sort of soften and glide. So you always get a nice turn on the top of a sleeve. So that's the same instance of why you have to trim that wool down.
In most patterns, that would be called grading.
Yes.
And you're absolutely right, because it's doing exactly what you say. And that's one of the things that I always wish that they would do, that somebody would actually say what that is, so that those watching, when they're being told you've got to grade it or step it or whatever, they're actually, so what this is and why I'm doing it.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people, when they actually sew, and patterns don't actually really address it, it does say, some people say the word scant to trim seam allowance back, or it just says trim, clip the corners and turn through. Well, wool's a different beast as well. So, for instance, last week we talked about using that sort of pinprick saddle stitch, which most bespoke jackets on Savile Row have. A lot of it is invisible, but when you look at it, you see an almost ever so slight dip, really even dimple going all the way down the fronts of the collar. And what that does is, when Esme made the comment that wool is really good to press, it is good to press when you're pressing the surface, but when you're trying to get a seam to lie flat, you've got to set the seam, which is what Kit was doing, which was putting a heavy object. And you don't have to have anything fancy at home. You can just get, some old encyclopedias, if people still have them at home, or heavy books, or even baking trays or pots and pans. Just press it and then put something on. And what it does, when it comes completely cool, it keeps the seams really flat. But a way of getting around that and stop, wool has a memory as well. So when it brings on moisture or it gets heat, what it does is it starts to go back to where it wants to be. So you can do a lot. Tailors on Savile Row were like magicians. So, for instance, someone will come in and they say, "Oh, it's not quite fitting right on the sleeve." And what we do is we go round the back, we get out the iron and the steam, and we go shh, 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 and you hear the vacuum board going a few times, and then you come back in and you shake the jacket and you put it on and you go, "So how's that, sir?" "Oh, perfect." So there's a lot of manipulation you can do with wool. You can shrink it and you can make it grow as well. But it's a mind of its own.
I was really concerned when they were pressing, because I thought you could make it, some of them, so shiny because they were really.
Yeah, they don't use press cloths, do they? Which is something
No.
I would always use. For me,
I would highly
my favourite
recommend.
press cloth, and again, this is something I kind of feel that's never necessarily spoken about. My favourite press cloth is silk organza, because you can see through it and it takes all hot temperatures. So I love that, and I would use it for any fabrics like that. Absolutely, to prevent shine. So looking at all 4 pairs of those +4s, I think it's a shame Yasmin didn't match her checks at all, did she?
Yeah, no. Yasmin and actually Kaz didn't match her checks.
She did. Kaz tried.
What she did was she laid 2 pieces together, 2 pieces of fabric, and then married the checks up and then cut it out and did that.
Yes.
Whereas Yasmin
which I think, you know, given the time scale, that was probably the best she could do, because I think that's the other thing, isn't it? And I do think it's a shame that Jasmine didn't, because hers was a big check, so it was more noticeable that it wasn't matched.
That's
and particularly at the front, I thought they were just so slightly out of line.
It was a shame, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought, if you know, it's like, I think it's like, as we said, if they'd been completely out of line, it kind of wouldn't matter. It's the fact that they were just a little bit, but still.
I mean,
the other thing, I made a note. I love the way they did that little illustration, and first of all they put the pleats in the front, and then they do this, and then it makes it sound so easy, doesn't it?
Yeah,
just add this, and this. It's all done.
Well, fair play to Kaz. She actually, you know, for instance, if Kim had sort of like asked me in terms of like top tips for like pattern matching, what you do with that, and Kaz did explain that, and she said, but I'm not doing that because of the time constraints, and I am just going to not wing it. That wasn't what she was doing, but she, in the sense of getting the pattern matching right. So what you would do is you cut on the double, and when you've got your first pattern piece off, you chalk that off, and then when you cut round that, you only cut the top layer off, and when you peel the top layer, see the bulk fabric off to reveal what you've cut out, you will see how ski width that pattern piece is compared to the one that's underneath, and it can be a good inch out on one place. So that's when a tailor will then rectify, and we peel that thing back, and we put a pin through the fabric, so we're hitting point to point, even in the center, because the bust points are really, really significant, because that's where your eye draws, and also the center front. So it is a real skill to get that, especially when people think if they use a large check, it's easier. It's actually not easier with a large check.
No.
With a smaller check, it's a lot easier, and also your eye disperses. So, but when you're looking at a really big, bold check, it sticks out like a sore thumb.
The future contestants, go for the plain ones, because you're going to eliminate
or a small check, so
or a very small check. We had a question on one of our YouTube comments, Alistair. Somebody asked, what chalk do you use?
Right, so I only ever use white chalk. I never use the coloured chalks. I have got a tub of, when I buy a box of mixed chalk, that all the other ones in. I never use wax. I absolutely hate the wax ones. The wax ones come into their own when you're using things like pleather or leather or things like that you need something to actually mark onto there. But in the industry, I'll give you a top tip. We use biro pens, which sounds hideous and awful, but in actual fact, we just reach for a Bic pen.
But would you recommend, like, is it the triangle chalk ones? Yeah,
the triangular one? Yeah, I'm really old-fashioned in terms of, I don't go with the pencils, and I don't go with what have you, because a pencil, if you put it in your kit bag and you drop it, or it's just, you're just, you know, going around with it, it's like a lead pencil. It splits in between and it just gets all messy. I don't like the ones that you have to
the wheels
powder in and
See,
all
I like that one.
Yeah, I like those ones.
That's the one I would use, because it's, you get the finest chalk line in it, and it does blow away nice and easily. So I do like those ones. The other one that I quite
that's the one that Wendy's talking about.
Yes, that's it. It's called
With
a
the wheel
chakra
on.
usually.
Chakra
And you
pel,
can get
yeah.
refill, and it's loose powder. The other one I like is actually a hemline product, and it's a white triangle, but it disappears. It automatically disappears. I can't remember whether it's with heat or just over time, but that's really good as well. As long as you don't mark it up and then put it away for a few days and then get it out again.
I was going to say, I once did a whole embroidery with, and it turns out it was an air erasable pen. and I did it all, and I thought, well, I'll mark it up tonight and then I'll be able to do it tomorrow. And then I came back and was like, oh no, it's all gone. It's been poofed. Anyway,
you can buy chalk sharpeners, which are really inexpensive. However, as I said, I'm a dinosaur in old school, and I use a Stanley knife, and I literally sharpen. I sharpen the edge of the chalk myself. The other top tip, which a lot of people don't necessarily know, and this, I do not know why this works, and it is like magic, but when you're trying to rub out chalk lines, sometimes chalks just will not budge or just don't want to come out. Don't reach for a brush. You're going to interfere with the top face of that fabric. You're going to wreck it, because you're going to really have to put pressure on. Get a scrap of the same cloth, and this is key. It has to be the same cloth. Try it at home and rub the same cloth onto the same cloth. It magically lifts the chalk off.
Now that is, again, what a learning day. I have never heard that, and I will definitely try, because that is something I do find with chalk. You can't always get it off. And if you don't get it off before you iron it,
that's it, set
it in.
That's it. Yeah. Do not.
That's a really good one. That.
Yeah. Regardless of what you're using, never ever put the iron onto it, because it's going to. And the other one is, if you're using a water erasable, I usually get a piece of kitchen towel or wet, damp it off, but then don't hang it on the radiator or in the sun, because you'll find that the marks will come back as well, which is another one. Anyway, going back to this, thank you for that, because that was something somebody had asked, and it's really important when you're marking up your patterns. Yes. So the winner, so fourth place was Kit, and you just knew where that was going because of the thickness of these fabrics, I do believe. Esme made a comment, because whilst you've got the buckles on for visual, you were never ever going to move them. Third was Kaz, and there was a small wobble in her fly. Yasmin was second. Esme wasn't bothered about the pattern matching and was actually looking at the sewing, which in other occasions, you know, it's like yin and yang. And then Ola, who I thought was very, very fast on this project.
She was fast.
It was really fast. She used a really lightweight wool and was highly complimented on her.
I think, I agree in her. I mean, I think all four of them were brilliant, and I think they were being very picky, and which they had to be in order to distinguish one from the other. But Ola definitely took the easiest option. So you had Kit with the two heavyweight, and then you had the other two with checks, and she took it wasn't plain, was it? It had like a little, some kind of fleck in it.
It was nice. It was a nice.
It was nice, but yeah, she did do an amazing job. I think she's quietly very, very good.
She's very, very good. Yes, considering she only has been sewn for a very. I mean, don't get us wrong, she's very young, so she would never have been sewn for 20 years, because she's.
Well, I've been sewing all my working life. What, 2-3 years?
Yeah, exactly. That's right. So I'm going to move swiftly on to the transformation challenge, our favourite one. This one was, and we've sort of mentioned this, talk about taking very good polo shirts and then, wrecking them. They were inspired by Rene Lacoste. They wanted a colour block garment of the choice of the contestant, and they were allowed to use up to 5 polo shirts that had to be impactful. They really were emphasising the colour. They wanted 3D shapes, and they wanted to know, they were looking at how the colours were combined around the body, on the front and the back. They were encouraging them to use the plackets and the collar in the rib. So straight away, Wendy, what did you think?
Well, as usual, I mean, my first thought is what a waste of 25 or whatever perfectly good polo shirts. I don't like this challenge personally. I know the contestants love it because it gives them a chance to explore their creativity. I've spoken to a lot of them about it. I don't think you can ever make anything decent in 90 minutes like that. However, coming back to exactly what they did, I actually liked Cass's. I thought she did have a mixture of all colours. I get, the fact the front could have had a little bit more, but 90 minutes she made that. Jasmine, where she used the plackets down the back, that, she literally followed what Esme had said. She wants to see the use of these things exactly. So she took that on board and listened. So I thought that was actually good. I actually really liked Orla's top with the swirls. I thought that was wearable.
Yeah,
it was actually wearable. She did only use 2 colours, and I'm not sure you could call it colour blocking when it's like that. So I'm not sure. Maybe that's why they marked her down. Personally, I didn't like Kit's dress. Maybe that's because I look at it and think there's absolutely no way on earth 99.9% of population could ever wear anything like that, not unless they were a model on a catwalk and stick thin and didn't matter if bits popped out, because certainly they would have done for
How do you go to the loo? I mean, does it all fall apart? That's always my thought when I see that amorphous dress.
What if those D-rings started coming undone as you're walking on? No, I mean, it had the least amount of sewing, but then that's not the brief, is it? It's turn some of this into this, and I guess he did that. He turned shirts into something totally different, and he did use a lot of colour, which is what she'd asked for. So I find it hard to judge personally, because I just think. So what do we have? So Yasmin
did the diamond top. She had the plackets on the back.
Yeah, that's right. She had the black diamond. I didn't find that so distasteful.
No. Actually,
because that looked okay. I thought it made the other colours really pop out.
I agree, because I felt because it was in the centre and it would be under your boobs, it actually emphasised the rest of the colours. I thought they were, and she came fourth out of that.
I know, and this is where we all sit. It's easy to judge afterwards, isn't it? And I just sort of sit there and think, well, this is a personal choice. You don't like black, so you mark her down.
Yeah.
Is that the right thing to do?
What we've said in the past is, when it becomes a colour issue, the judges should get all of the fabrics and then say, I don't like black, so take that out, or I don't like the grey tent, for example. I don't like grey. Take that grey tent out and make it at least a level playing field where the judges.
Because it isn't. If you're going to judge on a colour choice that you've put in there.
Yeah, I agree.
So Kit came first with his undressed dress. Orla with her swirls. I would have put that the other way around. Personally, I did like Orla's.
Yes.
Well, I thought it was wearable. I mean, it wasn't my colour. If I were judging it on colour, I'd have said, oh, it's a bit bland.
Yeah.
And that's because I like bright colours. But that's not a sewing skill. It's not a design skill. That's personal choice.
And of course, what you do know is that it is, elbows out in a race to the racks to pick up your colours. So even just selecting 5 really quickly when you've got other hands coming in, picking the ones that they want, must be a really difficult thing to do, because you want to sit back, don't you? And think, well, I'll go the pink route, or I'll go the green route, or
I'll go it would probably take me half an hour to decide what colours I want to work with.
Exactly. I'm afraid to
sketch.
Sorry?
Jasmine had drawn a little sketch.
I know. I
mean, they really do only get 90 minutes, because I've spoken to a lot of them and they have told me absolutely categorically what we see is what they get. But how on earth did she have time to draw a little sketch, not knowing what on earth she was going to be making?
I just think I thought it was harsh that she was fourth. I'll be honest with you, out of those ones. Now I'm always worried asking our Alistair what he thought of this challenge.
I noticed he's been very quiet so
He
far.
has, yes. He's a little bit tired, which is possibly a good thing. But anyway, darling, what did you think of this
today? Well, to back all of the contestants up, because this keeps on coming up, and I'm shocked even Esme keeps on going wailing on about this, because it's really starting to like annoy me. It's all about, well, there's nothing happening in front, and I'm like, look at some of the most iconic designers that have been and gone. When you're designing on the female form, some of the most celebrated and say erogenous and delightful things about the female form is that S bend on the back and the spine, and it just coming down to the thing. There are a lot of dresses out there. Valentino did it copious amounts of times, and the amounts of times he's been worn on the red carpet, Oscar de la Renta as well as another name to mention. But when a garment looks plain and then the person turns round and then you've got this dramatic back, there is nothing wrong with that.
No.
You don't have to have all bells and whistles on the front. You need to learn how to edit. Sometimes the most iconic things are where there's a detailing just at the front. And also they wanted, you know, when they criticized Gaynor all those weeks ago when she did that cutout on the side, and Esme was like, oh, I would have expected it to be much bigger. And I'm like, it was lovely. So when they've been going on about this whole thing about there's not enough going on at the front, all the detailings in the back, well then critique and say how nice the back is. Don't say that that's a bad thing because there's nothing going on in the front. That's what they've chosen to do. It doesn't all have to happen at the front. Anyway, that was my mono.
That actually came out in the last made to measure as well.
It was, but Kaz was marked down because the front looked too bland and everything was happening in the back. And you're like, for goodness sake, it's like the back and the way that she had constructed it, because then when in previous weeks they've looked at the front and then they've turned it round and they said, oh well, that you could have done something on the back. And I'm like, make your mind up. It's like, okay, so is part of the brief, you've got to do something on the front and you've got to do something on the back. It's like
they did actually on this one in the introduction say that they wanted to see the shapes around the body, front and back. You know, when Sarah goes off and talks to the judges. So whether that had been explained to the contestants, I don't know. But when they have that little chat, that came out. But can we just go back 90 minutes?
Yeah, 90. It is 90 minutes, but this is not over this series. This is not the first time that they've tried to not marks off people, but that's what one of their criticisms that has come out is that everything is happening either at the front and there's nothing at the back, or nothing's happening at the front and it's all at the back. So
how many wedding dresses do you know, or even evening dresses?
Exactly.
The front is just plain form fitting and then it's all in the back.
Yeah. And that fills a lot of women with dread, because it's what brasiers do you wear? And that's a whole 2-day shopping trying to find the right underwear to go under those types of dresses, you know. So
freeform.
Exactly, you know. But lingerie tape, I say, is your friend, and a few discreet cups at the front. And we've actually had to use gaffer tape in a few models as well.
Just I'm going to say lingerie tape and little cups don't do anything for me at all, I'm afraid.
Did you see last night?
Saucepans.
Completely different on the ITV Awards. Liz Hurley came on, and my goodness, take the opportunity to have a look. You could see the tape.
Could you?
She was just in. There was a lot going on. Well, there was very little fabric going on at the front. But yeah, it was. I was terrified to think if she moved quickly that everything would come out. Anyway, on that particular, go on, sorry.
So right, so Kaz is, I do agree with you, Orla. When it's color blocking, you need to look at designers like Yves Saint Laurent. Yves Saint Laurent did color blocking superbly, and also he was also famous for mixing navy and black at the same time, because the navy and black, you know, apparently should never be seen. But he threw that out. He was a master at color blocking, and also Tom Ford adopted that as well, and copious amounts of collections going forward for YSL. Yasmin, it was a really nice concept, I thought, and I wasn't deterred by the black. Again, that is a thing, and in actual fact, her, out of all of them, her one had the most sort of like complicated sort of like stitching that she needed to do, because she cut all those pieces freehand and then she had to sew them in sections to get them all fit. Kaz's was similar, but it was more coherent in all the lines, and she said she was overlaying it to then flap over to then top. Kits, if you want an example of color blocking, that was color blocking. So you did see, you know, colors that were over a garment. In 90 minutes, yes, he did really well in terms of his concept and also a homage to Esme herself. It wasn't my favorite piece. Also, when you're pulling that garment in, it's very bodycon. So where you've cut things, those seams are going to really lie flat. But there was no attempt to finish any of that, and he had loads of time. And he was, you know, it was edited, and he was sort of, oh well, I've got all this time, I don't know what to sort of do, whilst everyone is still, you know, sewing like the typers. But yeah, it's never my favorite one, and I don't really know why you would even at home, why you would even get a whole load of old polo tops and decide to recreate something out of them.
I think you said, Wendy, earlier on, we don't think that this, and we agree with this, that this doesn't do upcycling any real favours, because what you're wanting to do, and the whole concept of upcycling, is literally to be able to take one item and be able to wear and make it sustainable, not pop it in the bin after you've finished sewing with it. So I think some people look at this and think, oh, if it inspires people, that's great. But this isn't taking an old denim jacket and adding some new fabrics on it, or some embroidery, or repairing in a way that's, you know, pleasing and allowing an extension of the life of a garment.
That's what it, and I know doing that wouldn't necessarily be exciting TV.
No, that's right.
I think it would be interesting to see. What I'd love to see is a tatty garment and then it finished, but you wouldn't do that in 90 minutes. It just wouldn't be done.
No.
So, and I think that's why, you know, they do something like they do, and I just wish they could find another way. And they're not calling it upcycling, they call it transformation, I suppose, to make it better. But you are effectively ruining perfectly good clothes to make something that's totally unwearable. Going back to the previous show when Kaz made the little outfit with the little sleeves, and he picked up on the fact that the arms weren't on the mannequin because the sleeves wouldn't fit. And I thought that was unfair to pick on that, because not one single garment there was wearable.
No.
So actually, why did it matter that the sleeves didn't fit? It was a nice concept. It was a nice idea.
And had you had the time at home, then you could have made that with considerably more care and time, and you would have ensured that the sleeves fit. But in 90 minutes,
taken them out and made it a jerkin.
Exactly. But in 90 minutes, from being presented with a load of stuff, being given a brief, and then to actually put that into action straight away, it takes my hats off to them all, every single.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be sat like a rabbit in headlights. I really would. I wouldn't know where to begin.
I'd still be colouring in on me drawing. We're going to move on to the made to measure, which was for a 1920s special event. Something like a ball was what they actually said in their little conversation. They are, of course, allowed to practice at home. The fit had to be flawless. It had to be in early 20s. If it was in the early 20s, it could be a long dress. If it was the later 20s, it's sort of that tomboy style, the flapper dress. It had to be for a specific event. They wanted to see embroidery, sequins, beads, and sewing with light fabrics was also mentioned. Straight away, we'll go into Kit, who self-drafted, which in itself is a beast of its own. Compared to, so you had Kit, Ola, and Kaz, who used very similar fabrics, similar types of fabrics, and then Yasmin, who went for the cotton. Wendy, what was your thoughts on this particular last challenge?
Again, I actually thought they all did remarkably well, because sewing those fabrics is hard, they're slippery, and again, I'd like it if it's something, a voiceover or Esme or something at some point in the proceedings can say, here's a few tips for sewing with these slippery fabrics, you know, like when you're cutting them out and things like that. I know one of my friends always has a layer of tissue paper on and cuts them out with tissue paper. I tend to pin onto a cardboard, and I use scissors, which got like the tiny serrated edges. They help grip the fabric as you cut. I think it looked as if Kit had already pre-rolled hemmed his fabric, but he hadn't. He'd done that within the show, hadn't he? And he did a beautiful job.
That's been confirmed, because a lot of people initially thought, oh, he's done that, but on the Facebook page, somebody who knows him has questioned it, and actually Gaynor came onto that comment as well to say that she had, in the time in the show, had actually done long hems, but the way it was edited, it didn't show her doing the hem, so it looked as if it was potentially
so I think that's, I mean, that is, I think the way he went, I liked his self-drafted pattern. I thought it was really lovely. The thing that didn't sit well for me was the glitzy beaded fabric. It looked all right at the back, but it just, at the front, it looked as if it was just there. And I do actually agree. I think Esme said it made it have a modern look to it, because you've seen, you know, you see that sort of thing. So I don't think the front adding that worked, but I think that's down to time again, although they did have time to practice. So
he was covering some, he actually made a comment about he was hoping that the lace would cover some errors that he'd made in the sewing. So whether that had not been in his original design and it just been an afterthought to shove it on to cover it up, I don't know.
I can't remember what the little illustration looked like.
No, I'm trying to think back.
Kaz's I actually liked, although it was a bit tight on the model, but I did think it was beautiful. And I loved Orla's as well. I loved the swirls, you know. I thought it was absolutely fabulous, beautiful dress. The one that Yasmin made, it was very clever, and there was an awful lot of work in it, and it was amazing that she got it done in that time. If I was going to criticize anything, there was a couple of little bits that I thought, like the hem, she'd top stitched the hem, which I didn't think worked particularly well. But again, we're talking about time, you know, creating all of those pleats and putting all those elements together. And I think, as we said earlier, Alistair, it should have been hung, and any garment should be hung 24 hours before you hem it. And obviously they don't have that option. So, you know, yes, it's easy to criticize, but having said that, you've got to remember that that's not necessarily something they can be blamed for, because and it's like the pressing. It annoys me when they get marked down for pressing. They don't have time. Give them another couple of hours so that they can do the job properly. And they really don't have any more time than that. The only thing I would ask, and it's something I'm going to ask them when I see them in October, some of these other guys, when they're filming it, I'm assuming they have breaks for tea and coffee or loo. So they don't do 5 hours or 6 hours without a break.
No, that's something
I wonder if they stop the clock, give them half an hour, start the clock. I'm just, it's out of interest, really.
Yeah, we've never asked that either.
Because I don't think, you know, from a workplace point of view, you're not supposed to do more than 4 hours without a break, are you?
No, and a lot of the challenges have been 5 hours. Initially, we thought it was because they were working with children, and sorry, that was when the 4 hours.
Yeah.
So we questioned the timing on the children's show, and explanations were given it was the time for the children. But to my mind, I would have sent the children away. Do you want to? It
Well,
shouldn't
I'm
be.
sure they do go. I'm sure they
Yeah.
don't sit there for the whole
No,
4
so
hours.
it
No,
really
well,
affected them.
I can answer that question because obviously now being in theatre land, so the laws with the children, they when they're working, so in this instance because they're appearing on a TV program, they will have a licensed chaperone with them. So each child will have, if they've come from different places, will be chaperoned by, and it's not the parent. It is it will be a licensed chaperone, because there's a difference between a parent and a chaperone. A chaperone knows the actual legal responsibility for a child. So the child can be on a movie set the vast majority of a day. The working hours are only when they're on set.
So that then, when we questioned how little time they had on the children's episode, it was explained by some of the comments, oh, it was because they were working with children. That then doesn't sit well. So I know that's a completely different episode, but it's a good point. One of the things I was going to ask either of you was, particularly with Kaz, she was sewing on like the diamante beads, and she was using like a masking tape to keep them in place and sewing every other one. Have you got any top tips for something like, because it looked stunning, it looked fantastic on a garment. Wendy, have you done that or got any top tips for that?
I haven't used those big ones. I've used diamantes that are on a string sort of thing, and you can actually sew them with a sewing machine using a long zigzag stitch. So you go and it kind of like goes into the bits in between them. So you can use like a piping foot or something. But I haven't done that. I've only ever done it by hand. I thought her dress was magnificent. I would happily wear that, and I love the high-low hem. And I noticed that Esme she questioned the fact that she was using a high-low hem, as if that wasn't right when she was making it. She kind of put this query.
Yes.
You know, oh, you're doing a high-low hem, are you? Oh, why's that then? And it was like, to me, it was like saying that's not right.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
it looked lovely. Question for you, Alistair, was Duchess Satin was. Could you explain what Duchess Satin is? Because obviously some people on here will get very confused about the different terminology that's used and the different descriptions of the fabrics.
Right, so Duchess Satin is a much thicker satin. So you will find that in a lot of, let's use bridal wear, because most people have been to a wedding. So when you've got Duchess Satin, where you see it's almost like a really plain, beautiful, flat, matte sort of like satin, which has structure to it. Duchess Satin is thicker. What predominantly they were using were chiffons, which are like the voile, the see-through opaque ones. And then you would have, more in keeping with the era, you would have used a satin back crepe. And you've heard me on television talk about bubble crepes and this crepe and that crepe. Crepes have a beautiful fluidity to them. So they have movement. So they still move with a breeze, but they're heavier weight than a chiffon. So the chiffon is light and floaty, and if it spins, it will create volume and it will flutter down. Satin back crepe, when it spins, will go up and it will dramatically come back down because it has more weight in it to sort of let down quickly. It's a beautiful fabric to work with. You can get 100% silk, and you can also get polyester versions, which a lot of people turn their nose up about polyester. We've moved on quite a bit since polyester was originally used. And some polyesters are actually more expensive than silk because they're high-tech Korean fabrics, and they've been engineered to be more breathable. They regulate body temperature. The science behind these now are far and few between, and some of the German engineered fabrics are really, really expensive. So it's entirely chiffon. Everyone thinks working with silks or even the polyester versions are always like, oh, you know, don't be scared of it. They made parachutes out of silk. So in the Second World War, parachutes were made out of that. When parachutes became redundant, the queue outside, you know, the Royal Air Force to get a parachute, because they used to dye them and they used to make evening gowns with them because fabric was rationed. So silk is so strong. So don't get bogged out by it. Give it a go. My top tip with these slippy fabrics is every workroom, and John Scott's confirmed this, and I'm sure Wendy will have, lay calico on your table. It acts like a natural abrasion. So when you put a slippy fabric on top, it grips it and holds it in place. Your top layer, you're then able to shift around and move around. So you've got things just in line. That helps, for instance, when I always baste, and I wrote down here that please give basting a go. It feels alien when you're doing it, but the more practice, basting will be just as quick as pinning. And that's the level you should be getting up to. So when you're basting, which is a large running stitch, you will get that. When you've cut your pieces out on calico, the bottom piece stays on the calico and it won't move. And it means you can use your fingers to just delicately move your satin or chiffon pieces right up to the seam edge, so that when you baste, you're getting those pattern pieces exactly in, especially if you're French seaming. You want those pattern pieces to align perfectly. If you're picking it up and pinning it, it's going to distort, it's going to go all sorts of different ways, and that will give you the best results. I baste everything. I find it quicker. Currently at the Lion King, the kids are looking at me and I will baste something in place before I then fell it or hand stitch it down. And they're like, that's so much time. And I'm like, well, you're still hand sewing yours and I've finished, you know, type of thing. But that just comes with practice. And some of them are they're starting to baste, and it's quite nice to see.
Exactly.
These fabrics as well, you've got to make sure that you don't use too small of a stitch. If you make a mistake, it will take you forever to unpick that. If you're doing French seams, take your time. It's not a race. Obviously, in this case, it was.
Unless you're on the sewn bee.
Unless you're on the sewn bee, but take your time and just delicately work with them, and you'll get far better results. Also, you can, if your thread is too spongy and it's not a high spun polyester, like a proper one, like Moon Coats cotton, if you've got a spongy thread, you're going to get pucker in your seams as well. If you use a natural fiber in there, it can be too tight as well. The polyester high spun gives you a little bit of elasticity and allows you to do it. Plus, also it takes really high temperatures as well.
Yeah. So Wendy, did you agree with Garment of the Week?
No, but but really no, because it wasn't my cup of tea. So I get from the point of view of the execution of it. I think it was really, I think it would have been hard to pick between at least two of the other ones. I think Orla and Kaz were brilliant. I thought Kit's was great. I just didn't like this bit on the front here. So I think possibly, yes, it was the only one that was completely and utterly different. There was an awful lot of work involved in it. Just wasn't my cup of tea. So that's the only reason I wouldn't. But I mean, if I was judging it with all the other criteria in mind, rather than my personal opinion, then yes, I probably would have picked it.
And Alistair, happy with Garment of the Week?
I actually did agree with Garment of the Week. Just purely and simply, Yasmin has been a little bit off the radar, and the volume of work in that. Now, bear in mind, she didn't make this out of cotton, which would have been a lot easier to work with. She would have been able to put all those stripes and pipes, all that sort of thing on much easier. These were on like silky bases, so to get all that accuracy. I mean, Patrick pointed out a tiny wobble. I'm sorry, I'll forgive any wobble, because the volume of detailing that she did, you know, the box pleats, everything like that. It didn't bother, it didn't matter to me, the story behind it. But when you actually looked at it, it was of the era. It was a drop waist. It was exquisitely made. I did find that Kaz's, I saw where she was going with it, and I thought that it was a really beautiful, simple dress. And that era doesn't have to be feathers and diamonds and everything like that. It can be quite muted. Just watch Downton Abbey, you know, especially when they went through that 20s era. It wasn't all, you know, not all the sisters were all, you know, head to toe in jet, you know. Kits were Orla. I really loved. I loved the color. I loved the detailing at the back where it came into that tiny piece of trim. And again, this brings me on to the next point. She did use trim, but there was no sort of like element of like heavy beadwork or anything like that on hers. So in actual fact, when you now look at then Kits, I think he shouldn't have even have bothered putting all that white beadwork on the top. It did nothing to the design of the dress. And I think if he had actually just not put it on and just left his dress as it was, I think he might have scored a bit higher. But because he put that on, the bust area, chopping it off there, it threw it into a different era. The dress became confused. It just wasn't on brief. Also, anyone watching at home, because Kit self-drafted that pattern and he was wondering why it was gaping at the back. So that means because the pattern he had self-draped, the pattern is too long in the body and it needed to be shortened. So everyone's torso, and you'll find this when you go into, say, Marks and Spencer's and try on a size 14 on something, and one person it will gape, another person it won't. We're all different torso lengths, and some are shorter. When he said, I've put a curved seam into the shoulder, you don't do that. You pick the dress up from the shoulder, and sometimes you only want to pick the back up because the front might be fitting. If you've pulled the front and the back up at the same time, you're going to make this short in the body and you rectify the back, but you've got the same problem happening at the front that you didn't have before, and you've got that. That just needed lifting up to become tighter and possibly put at a slight angle so that piece that wasn't lying flat would just disappear into the shoulder seam.
So the big shock, and I was out yesterday with a group of ladies, was Kit went home. He's had 9 weeks where he's been very, very good, but he just fell short on this one. I think a lot of people would have assumed he was going to be in the final next week. So you're 3 quarter finalists. We've actually got 3 ladies in the final. We've got Ola, Kaz and Yasmin who are in the final. He was obviously very, very upset. I definitely think he had a week off, shall we say. It was a bad timing to have a bad week, unfortunately. But you're sad to see him go, Wendy.
Yes, in a way I was, because I think he has been excellent all the way through. And I think it's just the way the judging is. You have a bad week and that's it. Or anything you've done previously is it's not considered. And I think that's a bit of a shame. But yeah, the other way would be literally accumulating points as you go, and the person who's got these points sort of thing. But yeah, it was a bit of a shame. And I think Yasmin is the surprise here, because and it's not that she's not been good all the way through, it's we just haven't seen much of her. And again, that's all down to the editing, isn't it? We haven't seen really what she's doing, and maybe she's quite quiet and she doesn't sort of verbalize quite as much. And
yeah, she's maybe not outwardly good. It's happened before when Anne, she actually won it, but all the way through you hardly knew she was there, and then she sort of sneaked in at the end. So I do think that they put all of this filming into the can and then they edit it accordingly.
Yeah, they're not filming it in the time frame sort of thing that we're
No.
seeing it. You know, they're filming it over 2 days, and long days as well. These aren't 9 to 5 days, and we get an hour.
Exactly,
So
that's right.
obviously there's an awful lot that goes on that we don't see. There
And
is so just a word for, I can't remember who it was, but one of the contestants, this is hearsay, well, apparently said that if she started messing up at all, she would swear like a trooper constantly so that they couldn't use it. Because otherwise, as soon as you go wrong, they're on you. They're filming it, they're checking it out. So yeah, apparently that's what she did to stop that happening. Just for anybody that's going to enter in the future.
Swear. Learn to swear.
That's a top tip, actually.
It is a very top tip, absolutely.
Obviously, we can't use that on live TV.
No, I'm afraid you can't.
No, we're trained not to.
No, that wouldn't work.
No, you have to have golly gosh and such likes. Yeah.
So last week,
sugar lumps.
Yeah, sugar lumps. Yeah, I say Henry's. Last week we had 3 giveaways from Alistair, and the winners were the Northern Sewist, Christine Allen 7097, and Evelyn New Wheeler. So I'll get in touch with them and we'll sort the giveaways out for last week's episode, which I know went out late. So you're going to get a double whammy. This week you've got Inspired by the +4s, you said. However, Wendy wouldn't use it for this.
Yes, Wendy's not going to use it for this. Obviously, Wendy, you've got to comment to be in it to win it, obviously.
Okay.
So we've got 3 of these. This is 10% wool in here, and the rest of it's mixed fibre. So this is a lovely pink sort of with ochre and blue check. This one is, obviously someone's ringing in to buy some, and that will cut out in a little second. So this is 150 centimeters wide by a meter. So we've got 3 to give away. All you have to do is you just have to leave a comment, on the YouTube channel, and Kim will be choosing them at random, which they do. But we've loved your comments, so keep the comments coming in. And this is just a fun little thing to say, you know, you could actually have something there.
So if anybody wants to win that and doesn't want to make +4s, I think it would make a really lovely little shift dress. I think that would look great. Or you could have flared trousers, like almost like palazzo pants, but you'd have to put a zip in them. You can't have it bulky around the waist.
No, that's right. That's right. Wendy, it's been an absolute joy for you to come with us. But
can I just mention something else? Because this, you've got to come to Knit and Stitch show at Ali Pali, which is the, what dates is it? The 9th to the 12th of October. And if you come on the Saturday, which is the 11th, you're going to see a show with We 3 Queens. 3 outrageously funny and incredibly beautiful drag queens. Now, Alistair, do you know of anyone that's coming?
Well, I overheard in the canteen earlier Grace saying something as she was, you know, washing up all the teacups from last night. She did say something that she was going to the knitting. So I didn't think she's not a sewer, so I don't know why she's going, but she wangled a free ticket or something. Said something about the Women's Institute and something else, but I zoned out after then. It was just, you know, so I've got no idea, but I'm sure that she's, you know, she's got fingers in all pies, that one, you know, but you'll need to trick her on the way out, you know.
So she's coming, as is Senna, aka Luke from last year's winner of Great British Sewing Bee, and also Chanel O'Connor, who's a RuPaul's drag queen. So it's going to be an absolutely fantastic catwalk show, and that's on the Saturday. But yeah, there's catwalk shows every day there, so it's going to be really good.
Because you've got a lot, you're doing a lot there, aren't you?
Yeah, so that's what I'm doing for the rest of the year. I'm doing the live stages at the 3 autumn Knit and Stitch shows. So I've packed the schedule with lots of talks, demos, and catwalk shows.
Excellent.
It's going to be really good.
And what I'll do is I'll put some links on for that. In addition to that, Wendy also teaches with Stitchtopia. You and I both do those. So holidays abroad, again, I will, you're going to Morocco and Alsace next year and doing one in the UK. I think we're doing the same one in the UK. Again, I'll put that on as a link. I'm doing Cyprus in November, and then Turkey and Romania next year, plus a couple in the UK. So
it's a hard life, isn't it?
I know. So he's got to do it. It's as simple as that. Alistair will be popping up on your TVs as well, but you also need to remember that it's got 2 weeks left. We've got a 15% discount on the House of Alistair website, so just use the code BEE2025. That's BEE 2025 at the end at the checkout, and you'll get 15% off everything, including still the sale fabrics.
Yes, you will do. And lots of you are using it. And since we addressed it last week and the week before that and said, make sure you actually put the discount code in, because it does happen. It asks you for I think they call it either a discount code or a coupon code, because our site is an American from our friends in the States. So they have different terminology, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, excellent. Next week is the finals. Wendy, are you going to give it a call? Do you know who was going to win?
I would like Orla to win,
because
I think that she's incredibly talented and lovely, and it'd be nice to see a young, talented person win. But no, I can't. I think Yasmin's the silent one that's coming in, and maybe expert. And I love Kaz, and I love her attitude to sewing.
It's always a hard one, isn't it?
Yeah.
The final. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us, Wendy. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and we'll see you very soon. And bye-bye, Alistair. You've got to tackle the tubes now, darling.
I've got to tackle the tubes, and then hopefully it'll all come up. Well, they say it starts again tomorrow, but it never opens until it will be until about 3 p.m. in the afternoon before it goes full pelt.
Well, good luck. Anyway, we'll see you soon. Take care, everybody.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.